What's up guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to Reviews on Anything. My name is Peter and today you find me inside a car. Not just any car, this is the DS7 Crossback. And DS is obviously the brand that used to be part of Citroën, the DS3, 4 and 5 we all know. But DS is now a fully independent brand since 2016. So DS makes its own cars now, and this is the first car they make on a fully in-house developed platform. Obviously there are some parts and similarities to other products from Citroën as well as Peugeot, but effectively this is a brand new car and the first real DS car of this era. Now the aim of the DS brand is to be a premium brand, and they want to compete with the Germans, with the premium luxury cars from Germany. They want to have the French take on what it is to be a premium luxury car. So that is what they're trying to do, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. There's a lot of design, there's a lot of French touch things, I wouldn't say, but a lot of things that are different than the German cars. And I think they did a really good job in being different, because you know, you can be forgiven to mistake an Audi for a Volkswagen these days, or even a Skoda belongs in that lineup too. It's all very similar, it's all very German, and it's all very, you know what you're going to get. It's very predictable. Here inside, it's a very different story. There's a lot of different stuff going on that is just, you know, a new way, a new touch that DS has to that premium segment. Now, I'm not going to take you throughout the whole car because that will be a very long video, but there's a few things that stand out right away. First of all, there's this giant screen here in the middle that controls pretty much everything. There's hardly any buttons going on at all. There's a few buttons down here for the windows and the parking brake and the driving modes, but that's pretty much it. Everything is controlled on the screen. A second screen is right in front of you. Any dials or anything, they're not there anymore. It's just a fully digital instrument cluster, which means obviously that the dials are digital, but also navigation, cruise control, everything happens on that screen. So that is the first thing that stands out. Then we have a nice and chunky steering wheel, not too big, with a flat bottom that makes it a bit easier to get in and out. Not too many buttons going on. It's relatively clean, so that's kind of nice. So that makes you feel sort of in control and in command of the car. It's a crossover SUV, if you like to call it that way. So it's a bit higher, you know, it's a bit more like an SUV. So you do like the sort of commanding road position, which is kind of nice, and the steering wheel adds to that. Now overall, the design language, I'm not sure what they call it, but it's very angular. There's a lot of angles here. Here on the steering wheel, on the vents, here on the middle console with the buttons. Even the footrest down there is angular. The door handle here is angular. There's a lot of angles and triangles going on. It's, you know, not something I particularly like, to be honest, but it is something different again than what the Germans do. And I think overall the cabin is nice. It looks nice. This ruby red obviously has to be your preference, but it looks good. It certainly looks and feels a lot more premium than what you would expect from a Citroën, for example. Not sure if it's completely up to par with the quality you get in an Audi, but it is a very good start. It's not all good news though. There are a few mistakes. Here in the middle console, for example, there is a cubby hole for your phone. So that's, you know, nice and handy. You put it there, you don't have to put it in the cup holder. Looks good, you think. But if you want to put the car in drive or park or reverse, you're going to bump into your phone. You have to reach around it. Your wrist will rest on it. It's not practical, so that is not thought through. Then there's a few buttons down here for the lane keep assist, the heated window, your mirror controls down there too. First of all, you can't see them when you're sitting here in your driving position. You have to sort of look around in order to see them. Then they're at a certain height. They're here under the vent that you can't really touch them like this, but you can't really touch them like that either because they're too deep. It's too complicated. You can't see it. You can't operate them when you're driving because you have to, you know, lean around and look there. It doesn't work. The same thing with this sort of hump on the steering wheel. There's a little sort of bubble here on the top that gets in the way of the screen. If you have the steering wheel up a little bit more, if you like to sit a bit higher with your hands, then it blocks half the screen. Also not thought through. But the biggest mistake by a mile is the display here. It has a few shortcut buttons underneath. When you're driving and when the car's on, it's all well. You can see the buttons. They have a little logo that glows up that you know what the button does. As soon as you turn the car off, the logos go away. Now that's not a problem when you're getting out, but when you still want to operate the screen, so you turn it back on, for example, to change a few settings, the logos don't appear anymore. It's completely baffling, and you have to sort of guess what the buttons do and sort of find out what they do. So that's also a mistake. So there are a few mainly ergonomical mistakes here that are just not thought through, and that's also areas where you can see that this is a first try car. If you look at Audi, for example, they've been building luxury cars for a very long time, so all those mistakes have been fixed. All those mistakes don't exist anymore because everything just makes more sense by trial and error. So those mistakes, you could forgive DS for having those mistakes, but on the other hand, you know, if you're going to look and you want to compete with the Germans, then those mistakes, yeah, are not quirky or anything. I don't think it's cool. It's just mistakes that should not be there and certainly don't feel very premium. Now here in the back, there's obviously the price that you pay for this kind of car. This being a crossover, a cross SUV, or whatever you want to call it, there's just not that much space in the back. If you go for a full-size SUV, you get a bit more space. If you go for a station wagon, that's a bit lower obviously, you get a lot more space. In here, it's just not very big. It's fine for your average shopping trip, maybe a little holiday away and all that kind of stuff. Like me, if you have 2 little children that require a lot of stuff and a lot of space in the boot, it's not going to cut it. There's no way around it. So after driving this car for a while now, how can we judge it? How can we sum it up? I think there's a few things to consider. First of all, let's have a look at the car itself. I think as a design exercise, it's come out really well. It looks awesome on the outside, I think, with a lot of cues from other brands. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but I see a lot of Audi in the taillights, for example. The strip in the middle on the back is clearly Porsche. The bonnet looks a bit like a Range Rover. The big gaping grille has a bit of a cross between Mitsubishi and Audi as well. So I don't know if it's on purpose, but there's a lot of sort of familiar elements from other premium brands. Which is, you know, on the one hand, you could say if it's stolen, that's not so good. On the other hand, why come up with a bad design yourself if you can also copy a good design? In terms of the car as what it is, you know, it's a crossback SUV, so you will. So, you know what you're going to get. Not too much space in the boot, as we've seen. But here inside, there's plenty of space for mainly the driver and the passenger. There is, I'd say, ample space in the back. If you wanted to drive there with 3 adults, I suppose it's technically possible, but I wouldn't really recommend it. Personally, for me, with 2 small kids, it fits. It certainly does, but it's not like you say, oh, there's plenty of space left. It's not completely fair coming from a Skoda Superb station wagon in my case, which obviously has ample space and then some. But I have 2 small kids. I have to live with that fact, so I have to pick my car accordingly. And I'd say, yeah, it's just not enough room. With the station wagon, you're better off. But if you have older kids that don't need booster seats anymore, you know, that's a whole different story. And obviously, as soon as you don't have to take strollers and buggies and all kinds of stuff for the kids anymore, the boot space also becomes a different story. The driving experience, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, I think. The size of the car is not much of an issue. You have good visibility all around. You can see the edges of the car reasonably well. Thanks to all the sensors, the camera and all that stuff, it makes driving also in tighter environments no, not challenging at all, I'd say. Obviously you have to pay attention because it's still a large vehicle, but I think if you've been driving this car for a while, it should not be a problem at all. The steering is nice and light at low speed, which is good, makes maneuvering much easier. And actually the turning circle is surprisingly small, so that's good too. It's not, you know, a car that gives you tons of feedback in terms of what the front wheels are doing. You know, of course, but it's, you know, nothing too exciting. It's certainly not, you know, a sports car like SUV or an SUV that claims to be rivaling like a Porsche Macan, for example. So, you know, it doesn't make any claims that it's not going to be able to keep. Of course, you can start playing around with the various driving modes that vary from eco to normal to comfort to sport. It does, you know, make a difference in terms of the steering feel and the hardness of the damping and the suspension. Personally, I always find that a bit of a spielerij for cars like this. It's not a sports car. You're going to put it in normal and leave it there. I don't think you're going to be messing around with it too much. Even when you're presented with the opportunity of a nice mountain road on a Sunday afternoon with no other traffic, this is not the car for it. So those modes, personally, I always find them a bit redundant. You know, let the engineer set it to a certain mode that fits everybody. Maybe have one setting for, you know, comfort and eco, and that's it. So I wouldn't bother too much with that. But overall, it's a car that's, you know, reasonably well placeable on the road. easy to drive in both highway and tighter environments, and overall you're going to be nice and comfortable, because you know that is what this brand is also about, being comfortable, long cruising as well. Then we have the engine. It's a 1.6 petrol, in this case made it to an 8-speed automatic. The automatic is fine. It's not a dual clutch PDK box or anything, but it's, you know, it does what it needs to do. I'd say with 8 gears though, sometimes you find that it's switching and searching for the right gear a bit too much, especially sort of in medium speed in and around town traffic. It's sometimes, you know, you're doing 50 and it's already in 5th gear, and then, you know, you want to get a traffic light and it has to drop 3 gears. It can be a bit much. The same thing on the highway really. If you're, you know, cruising in 8th gear and you choose to do a nice overtake, then it has to drop 4 gears and then you're off. So it's a bit much maybe, but overall it does work with fuel economy and it's very drivable if you get used to it. And worst case scenario, if you really want to make sure you are in the right gear at a certain time, then you can still work the paddles here behind the steering wheel. But I don't think they really add anything to the car, because those are things that you're going to use twice just to see how it works and then never again. So as a car though, I think, you know, it's a nice vehicle. It's nothing too shocking that will blow you away, but it's a nice place to be and it's a nice machine to operate. Overall, it's, you know, a comfortable car that you can easily drive around in. And once you're familiar with the size of it, you know, it sits nice. You're a bit higher up the road, good view outside. So overall, it's a good car to drive. So then that's the car dealt with. Now we have to talk about the brand as a premium branding exercise. Have they pulled it off? Well, there is a lot going on here, and DS is really trying hard to make sure that you understand that this is now a separate brand from Citroën. So previous DS's were sort of fancy, decked out Citroëns. This is really their own new car. So it's a new proposition that they're putting into the market, which means you're not going to a dealer, but you're going to a salon. Which means you get premium materials, premium treatment, premium everything, premium look, premium styling. And they really want to sort of aim at the German competitors and sort of beat them at their own game, so you will. So they're really making an effort to be different. And that's from the minute you get into the salon, you notice that different. You get treated differently, they talk different about the brand, they talk about the ideas behind the brand, which is really nice. And in here, you can also really tell that they've stepped up the game with the material choices, with the way everything looks, with the design. It is really something different from Citroën. Comparing it to the Germans, obviously the biggest problem I think for DS is that they're new to the party. The Germans have been doing, especially brands like Audi, have been doing luxury premium branding for decades. So they're way ahead in terms of experience in that game. And you cannot expect DS, I think, to get it completely right on the first try and become a serious rival. And there are problems in this car. I talked about it earlier. Ergonomically speaking, there's things that are missing. Sort of the overall feel of the cabin, there's things that are just not as premium as you would get from the German competitors. Same thing goes for the driving experience in general. It is a very different feel in terms of how the car handles, how it behaves around you, than you would get from one of the German competitors. Different not necessarily meaning bad, but it is different, and I think that's the key thing to remember here. The DS brand is different. The way the car looks, the way the car feels, the way it drives, everything is slightly different than the Germans do it, which is, you know, up to you to decide if that is your kind of different or not. Personally, for me, if the car was a bit bigger, if it was an actual full-size SUV, I would lean more towards the German edge of the scale. I like the premium German feel more than I would like the premium feel in here. I think for the money I would choose one of the German competitors. But that said, I think DS has done a pretty good job in this first try in presenting a car that is new, that's exciting, and that is maybe not yet a completely on par alternative, but certainly presents a lot of interesting things for the future. I think maybe 1 or 2 iterations further down the road, maybe a few different cars that they're gonna bring out in years to come, I think DS can become a very interesting premium experience that is different than the Germans. And I think job well done by DS for that. I think they're not there yet. This first try is nice, but it's not completely on par yet. But I think in terms of separating themselves from Citroën and becoming really that premium different brand that it used to be, I think they've done a really good job there. that was it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was certainly fun to experience this new premium car from a French manufacturer. Let me know in the comments below how you feel that the DS brand is positioned or should be positioned, and if it is indeed a viable alternative to the German established brands. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to the channel, that always helps us out a lot, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Cheers!